Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video. For once, we are not starting it in my kitchen or in my hallway. We are actually in my garage. So apologies for the backdrop. It doesn't matter what way I turn. This garage is ugly. Anyway, I'll get to why I'm in the garage in just a sec. I have quite the hefty to-do list for this week. The garage is on that to-do list. I've also still got to sort out the boys' clothes to start school next week, because they start school next week. In literally 1 week, 7 days, they go back to school, and I am so not prepared. I also need to give the house a bit of a clean with the boys being home and my husband being home. I'm just getting to that point now where cleaning's kind of gone out the window and it's starting to nig at me a little bit, you know, when you have a really messy house and it just gives you anxiety. I get like that sometimes, so the house really needs a clean. And at some point in this video, I'd really like to sit down and talk to you guys about Avery's gastrostomy experience. If you're new to my channel, my daughter is tube fed, and she does have a G-tube, and she had her surgery earlier this year. And when Avery was on the waiting list for her surgery, I scoured the internet for experiences and stuff. I just wanted to know what it was going to be like, what amount of pain she was going to be in, and just what to be prepared for, really. I found a lot of solace in a Facebook support group, but I just thought I would make my own video on it, just in case there is anyone out there looking for what I was looking for, basically. Kind of like a story time, I suppose, so I will get to that later on in this video, but for now, the garage really needs some attention. If you are new to my channel, hi, I'm Chrissy and I am a mum of 3. I create 2 new videos every single week, all about how we live our day-to-day life while adapting to children with additional needs. 2 of my children do have additional needs. My eldest son, Zachary, has autism, and my daughter, Avery, has cerebral palsy. I'd love if you would hit the subscribe button and follow us along on our journey. Right. Garage. So let me show you what I'm working with here. So I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see because of the lighting, but this is my garage, and believe it or not, I have actually already started to get to work in here. It was a whole lot worse before. We've just got so much junk everywhere. All of this stuff in this pile is stuff that needs to stay, but it needs to be organized. I've got stuff over there that needs to go to the tip. These up here, these boxes, they're actually all Avery's feeding supplies. As you can see, there is just no room for them in the house, so they stay out here. We like to keep them on top of a desk just to keep them off the floor. And then these 2 wardrobes were actually Zach and Eli's wardrobes when they were little, but I've just been using them in here as storage, but they didn't really work well. I couldn't really get that much in them. They were full. They had stuff all over the floor and then stuff up on the top shelves, but they're just not serving a purpose anymore, so we are going to get rid, and that will clear up a whole lot of space. And then my plan is to buy some big plastic storage boxes, maybe like 60 litres or something like that, and have a few of those and stack them all against one wall, and then hopefully everything will have its own home, and then the bigger boxes will just kind of have to stay as they are, but hopefully it should look a whole lot neater. There's another reason why I'm doing this. We don't intend to stay in this house. We do really want to move, so we can't guarantee we're going to have a garage in the next house. So if everything's already in plastic storage bins, it's going to make it much easier to move and then store, and then just figure out what we need to do with it then. So that's the plan. I really don't know where to start here. I think I'm just going to have to pick a spot and start, I suppose. Send help. That is not what I expected to find in the garage. I am so not comfortable with doing this. I am not an outdoorsy girl. I don't like spiders. I don't like the idea of anything jumping out at me, and I really feel like in this garage something will. Anyway, I'm just gonna crack on with this. I know for a fact that I won't get it done today because my husband needs to do some tip runs, but I'll definitely show you what it looks like when it's all finished. Also, that day that I left things out to charity, it was a few videos back, and I left some bags out to charity because they were doing like a donation collection. The guy drove past in his van, I saw him, And I know for a fact there was a few more people on the street that had left things out. He just drove past, he was barely looking around, and he just drove out. He didn't even collect them. So they are stacked in here. I've even added another bag to the collection, ready for when another charity bag comes round, and then they will go out to donate. Little lady is having her second blend of the day.
Yeah, she is.
What do you think's in it, Eli?
Maybe bananas.
There's no bananas in that one.
Cereal?
There's Weetabix in it. Can you please get me a bib?
That? I'm trying to help Mummy with stuff. Hello, Mrs. Mayor.
So this blend is Weetabix coconut yogurt. I used a baby. Yes. I used a baby puree packet and that had apple and strawberry in it, and soy milk. Avery's not dairy free. The reason I try to find dairy alternatives is because of her reflux. The research I've done has said that because of the fat content in dairy, it can actually make reflux worse. So if ever I find a dairy alternative that's decent in calories, then I'll just use that instead. As you can see, the children are having a pajama day today. We're not going anywhere, so we're keeping them comfy.
Nothing to do.
Nothing to do. No, nothing to do. School next week.
Yep.
I'm gonna make up Avery's next few days of blends. I've just popped on a dressing gown because I was a little bit chilly. What I've been trying to do the last couple of days is just make a couple of days worth and keep them in the fridge. So I'm gonna make 2 different kinds of blends. I'm gonna keep 2 of each in the fridge, and then one of them I would like to make a few extra to pop in the freezer, just because they're always good to have on hand, just in case we're in a bit of a rush and we don't have time to blend if we don't have anything in the fridge. So I've worked out the calories in all the foods that I'm using, so I know what I'm gonna do. For one blend, I think I'm gonna do, I've got some blueberries here. So I'm gonna do blueberries, use prune juice as the liquid. The reason why is because Avery could do with a little bit of a boost in that area, if you know what I mean. Prune juice is really good to keep their body moving. And then for the carbohydrate, I'm going to use good old rusks, and then I think coconut yogurt for the protein. Like I said earlier, I do like to use a dairy alternative if the calories are good in it, and this has pretty good calories. So that's the first blend, and then the second blend, I think I'm just going to do like banana. I've got some Weetabix here. These are pretty good in calories, and they have lots of fiber and nutrients in them. So that's carb and fruit. And then I will probably use soya milk, that's protein. Then I might add some peanut butter if I need to add a calorie boost. But to be fair, most of these are pretty decent in calories, so they'll probably be fine. I just popped some hot water in with the rusks, just to help them soften a little bit to make them easier to blend. So there's about 50 ml of water in each. I don't really know if I'm going to need the prune juice in that, to be honest. It's quite liquidy, but it might thicken up because the rusks will soak up all of the liquid. So I'll see what it's like once I've blended it. Don't mind me, guys, just trying to get content for an Instagram reel too. I think that might actually be thin enough without prune juice, to be fair. I'll probably just use prune juice in the banana blend then, because I definitely want to use it, just because we're noticing Avery's getting a little bit backed up. So I know, too much information, but this is life for me anyway. So yeah, I think I'm going to use prune juice in the banana blend. That one is definitely thin enough. And there we are, half an hour well spent. I'm just going to pop these in the fridge/freezer now. tidy up my mess a bit, and then go give Avery some cuddles. What a difference from 2 weeks ago, eh guys? Hey, you're so much better. Oh, you're so much better. It's a fair bit later now. I managed to get a fair bit of my to-do list done today. Avery is in bed asleep. The boys are in bed watching their TV before they go off to sleep. So as promised, I thought I would sit down and share Avery's gastrostomy experience. Well, when I say Avery's, really I mean ours, because I can't really say what Avery was thinking or feeling, but I can share our experience as parents. And like I said earlier, I just thought that there might be a few people that might find this helpful, because I know that I would have when I was waiting for Avery's G-tube surgery. So some of you may already know that Avery did have an NG tube for well over a year. So for us, it wasn't really the case of feeding tube or no feeding tube, it was NG tube or G tube, which did make the decision to refer her for gastrostomy surgery much easier. So we actually made the referral, or we had our pediatrician, Avery's pediatrician, make the referral in June of last year, so June 2021. The referral needed to be made for the Specialist Children's Hospital for the Southwest, which was Bristol Royal Hospital for Children, because Avery was, and probably still is, under 10 kilograms. So she was too small to have the surgery in our local hospital. In the meantime, while we were waiting to hear back from the surgeon, Avery had a couple of tests. She had a barium swallow, which is where they put some barium solution down her NG tube, and they kind of x-ray her stomach so that they can kind of see where that liquid is going, make sure that her organs, her tummy, everything is all in the right place basically, and to make sure that her tummy was emptying properly. She also had a pH study, which is why we know that Avery does have severe reflux, which was another thing that helped kind of push that referral a little bit more. We ended up finally getting an appointment with the Bristol surgeon in January of this year, so January 2022. So it was a fair wait from the referral to actually meeting the surgeon. And basically that initial contact with the surgeon was to go over our options, get some information, hear about the risks and the benefits, and ask any questions that we may have. We opted for a primary button insertion. So normally when children have gastrostomies, it is quite common for them to have a fracture tube first, which also known as a dangler, I think. It's basically a G-tube that comes out of the stomach, and it is held in by a plastic disc. So there's no button and you can't detach the tube. It kind of stays there dangling, hence the name. And then they would go on to have that G-tube swapped out for a button about 18 months down the line. The surgeon did say the primary button insertion was quite a new procedure that they did. They had only been doing it for about a year to a year and a half at that point. But for me, that was long enough for me to feel comfortable that they had the experience and the know-how to avoid Avery then later having to have another surgery to have the button inserted. We also discussed the option of a J-tube, because obviously Avery does have the severe reflux, which is similar to a G-tube, but instead of being fed into the stomach, they're actually fed into the jejunum, which I'm not a doctor, so I don't know exactly where that is, but I think it is somewhere between the intestines and the bowels. But the drawback with that method is that Avery would have had to have been on a continuous feed, and I just didn't like the idea of her being attached to a feeding pump 24/7. I felt as though we still had other options to explore before we had to consider that route. For us, there were just tons of benefits for us to go with the G-tube over the NG tube, one of which is the blended diet option. Obviously you guys know that I am transitioning Avery onto a blended diet, and I could make a whole separate video about what I've learned in terms of the benefits of a blended diet, but I think what I would rather do is actually give Avery a little bit more time and then share our experience and what we've actually found beneficial instead of what I have researched, if you know what I mean. So we made our plans with the surgeon, and the surgeon said that she was going to put Avery on the waiting list as a priority just because of her reflux, and we should hear back within around 2 to 3 months. What she did say is it was likely that I wouldn't actually hear for about 1 to 2 weeks before the actual surgery date, so that is not a lot of time to prepare considering we lived 3 hours away from the hospital. Her surgery was scheduled for the 26th of April 2022, and it was, as the surgeon said, we did not get a whole lot of notice, but the boys stayed with my mother and father-in-law, and me and my husband took Avery up to Bristol. We were told to arrive at midday, which is what we did, and as a general rule, when people are having a general anaesthetic, they're told not to eat for quite some time before. So that day we weren't allowed to feed Avery at all. We were able to give her a nice big flush of water in the morning, and then that was it. So we already knew in terms of Avery's mood it might end up being quite a hard day. Avery was admitted onto the day case ward at first. This was pre-op, and on the day case ward they still had some COVID restrictions, so my husband wasn't actually allowed to come onto the ward, so he had to go and walk around the city centre for a little while Avery was waiting for her surgery. They told us when we arrived that Avery was first on the list. She was not first on the list. As a matter of fact, from what I can remember, I think she was actually the last one to go down for her surgery. We were on the day case ward waiting for about 4 hours, and again Avery had not been fed and we weren't able to feed her, so that was pretty tough. But they did her obs, everything was all fine. We were literally just waiting. During that time as well, the surgeon that I'd met in January came up to see me and just went over the risks again, and obviously I had to sign a few forms. She ended up going down for her surgery at about 4 in the afternoon. So I of course went down with her, and we were shown into this little room, and I was able to hold her while they put her to sleep. So they used the gas mask, which I'm actually really happy with, because she didn't have to go through the ordeal of having the initial cannula put in while she was awake, and I just held her until she fell to sleep. I don't think there's quite a feeling like feeling your child just drop off to sleep so quickly in your arms. Zachary, my eldest, I've also held him while he's had a general anaesthetic. It isn't a nice experience, it does feel very emotional. But once Avery was asleep, I laid her on the bed, I gave her a kiss, and then I was shown out. I was told that they would call me when the surgery was finished, so I went off to find my husband and we went and got something to eat. I got the call about an hour to an hour and a half later from the surgeon, who said that everything had gone as expected. She was really happy with how the procedure went, so immediately that obviously calmed my nerves. She told me that Avery was in the recovery room and I could go and see her. Again, because of the COVID restrictions, I was the only one that was allowed to go in. My husband wasn't allowed to come with me. So I went to the recovery room. Avery was still quite drowsy. She was half asleep and she had dressings all over her stomach. So they had covered the site basically with dressings and bandages. And then I could just see the extension set coming out of the side, which was attached to like a drainage bag or a venting bag, and there was some sort of brownish reddish liquid in there, and the staff said that that was totally normal and not to worry about it. It was just kind of draining what was in her stomach. She also had a cannula in, which was connected to an IV, and that was giving her fluids, because obviously by that point she had gone all day without food and without water, so they wanted to rehydrate her, and they didn't want to use the G-tube straight away. They needed to let it settle, so they were giving her fluids through an IV. I'm not gonna lie, seeing her so vulnerable like that and half asleep and covered in bandages, I felt incredibly guilty. And I mean, I know that it was all for the greater good and we were doing it all for a good reason, and Avery would experience so many benefits from having the procedure. I just felt so guilty that I had let someone do that to my child. After Avery's surgery, she was admitted to the general surgery ward for her post-op recovery, I suppose, and my husband was allowed on this ward, thank goodness. So I didn't need to be alone anymore. He was allowed to come and help support us. So he met us up at the ward. She was shown into her bed space. We kind of met with the nurse that was on call. I believe we might have spoken to the surgeon as well. Quite a lot happened in a short space of time. Then Avery started to wake up. And I mean, obviously she was kind of awake, but she was drowsy, but she really started to wake up and stir, and immediately we could tell that she was in a fair bit of pain, and that was really, really hard to see. I think there was probably a time within that first day that both me and my husband wondered, have we made the right decision here? Just that first part when they come out of the surgery and they are just so vulnerable and weak and obviously in pain is really, really hard. But we just had to remind ourselves that it's all for a good reason that we have done this. Now, going back to what I said earlier about finding a lot of support and information on Facebook support groups, I did read on there from quite a few different people that unless you say something, the only pain management that the hospital are likely to give are the standard paracetamol and ibuprofen. And if you feel like your child needs something stronger, then you need to ask. So remembering that, immediately I said, she's in pain, paracetamol hasn't helped, can she please have something stronger? So at that point they then prescribed her with morphine. So they gave her a dose of morphine and we saw an instant difference. She settled down, she calmed down, and she was able to go back to sleep. So I definitely second those recommendations, that if you feel as though your child needs something to help them with the pain, then definitely just ask. Don't just assume that the hospital will give it to them, because they don't know your child like you do. The next couple of days were basically just allowing Avery to rest and recover from the initial surgery. Those days were difficult. I was scared to even hold Avery. I didn't want to hold her close to me and cuddle her in like I normally would, because I was afraid I was going to hurt her stoma site. But in the same sense, she was uncomfortable and she was unhappy. I didn't just want to leave her laying in the cot. I felt like I needed to pick her up, but at the same time I couldn't pick her up. It was really, really difficult. Just trying to be totally transparent with you. I'm not trying to scare anyone, but obviously if your child's had surgery and they're in pain, it's going to be difficult. I don't think there's any way to kind of sugarcoat it. It is going to be hard. Now, I mentioned a few videos ago when Avery had IV antibiotics that we had an issue with her cannula, and within 24 hours it stopped working. Now, we had this issue when we were in Bristol. I believe twice they had to reinsert the cannula, which again isn't nice. It's just like adding insult to injury. She was already in pain and they were just poking her with needles, so that wasn't very nice, but they needed it to be able to keep fluids into her and to keep it open as an option just in case they needed to get medicines into her quickly. They did wait that entire first day before they started to use the G-tube, so it was the day after her surgery that they started to feed her, and it was kind of a slow process. So we started off with just a really small amount of her usual feed and slowly built up, and obviously she was back onto her normal feed volume and rate and tolerating it fine before we were discharged home. We were in the hospital for 3 nights. I was able to sleep in sort of a pull-out bed that was next to Avery's bed space, but my husband wasn't allowed to stay the night. My husband's brother does live in Wales, so he actually ended up travelling to and from Wales every night, and it's not exactly a short journey. It was over an hour, but it was just a more affordable option than finding a hotel in Bristol. The day that they discharged her, I was a little bit worried. Avery was still in some pain and I was just a little bit concerned, because I knew that when she was discharged from hospital she would no longer be able to have the stronger pain medications. She would only be reliant on paracetamol and ibuprofen. And I did express those worries to the doctors, but they assured me that she would be fine. The car journey home was okay. Avery slept for some of it, and when we did get home I was glad for it, because there was an immediate change in Avery. She was so much happier once she was in her own bouncer in front of her own TV watching Frozen. she just settled right down and she seemed so much happier than she was in the hospital. So that is basically the gist of it. If you've got any questions about anything specific, then leave them in the comments down below and I'll be sure to get back to you. There's probably a lot that I've missed, but that's just a basic overview. I mean, my camera's already turned off once, so I know for a fact I've been talking for way too long and some of this will have to get cut. I am quite tired now. I think I'm gonna head to bed. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please give it a thumbs up and I will see you in a few days with another video. Bye guys.